Yo, 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 Big D with you with another football episode on the Big D podcast. Before I bring in tonight's special guest, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. Plenty of football content, other content coming. Also, check out the Big D podcast for all your audio listeners on Spotify and Apple. So, if you can see the Bruce Smith and Buffalo Bills background, you know that my next guest must be a huge Buffalo Bills fan. So, circling the wagons with me tonight is my friend Jeff Bell. Jeff, you know what this weekend is? It's Bills Chiefs. So that means it's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
It is, the it's not a primetime matchup, but the elite matchup between those two quarterbacks that are really look like the present and the future of the league. So anytime these teams are together, this is one that you circle on the calendar, and this is one that when the schedule was released, we are looking forward to week 6, just knowing that this was on tap, and here we are. I can't even believe it.
Yeah, it seems like you get an era where there are two quarterbacks meet either a year apart or from the same draft class, and this feels like the Brady Peyton quarterback rivalry of this era.
It really does. When you add in the playoff stakes over the last couple of years, that it brings it up that element. Then even on top of it, the Bills traded away Patrick Mahomes. And I think that that's something that people forget often, that they traded that draft pick that the Chiefs used to get Mahomes. And so there's even an extra element on this, that they traded Mahomes and they weren't ready to invest in quarterback with that pick. They took Josh Allen in the next pick. They got a draft pick for the next draft for that out of that Mahomes trade. They used that to move up, and they got Josh Allen then. So it's really wild that when you add that element and that layer to it, and of course, when you're a Bills fan, you assume that whatever can go wrong is going to go wrong. And so when you have that extra element, you're like, is this our curse? Did we just curse ourselves because we traded this guy away?
And you ended up okay with Josh Allen quarterback wise.
We are. I'm very, very thrilled to be in the position that we are with quarterback, but it's one of those, we just got to get this guy one time. We got to get this Mahomes in the playoff one time, and then feel a little bit better there.
So speaking of the playoffs, thinking back to last year's AFC division round, that was one of the best quarterback games I have seen in a long time. How about Allen was, let me see, stat wise, 27 of 37 for 329, 4 touchdowns. Mahomes was 33 of 44 for 378 and 3 scores. Both quarterbacks also led their teams in rushing.
Yeah, it was wild. They back and forth, especially, there was one of those that the first half they felt each other out a little bit. It was kind of like, prize fighters that you get in early rounds of a boxing match. They might start out feeling each other out, and then they come out and they start swinging haymakers. And that's kind of really what happened in the second half of that game.
Yeah, and then Josh Allen threw one of his touchdown passes, gave her Davis 13 seconds left. You'd think game's over. And Mahomes drives down the field, Chiefs score, and you knew who was going to win knew the team that won the coin toss was going to win the game, because the Chiefs couldn't stop Allen, the Bills couldn't stop Mahomes.
Yeah, and that was one of those that even, because everybody remembers the 13 seconds, but even like that last 2 minutes or so, the teams traded off touchdowns multiple times, and the lead traded off touchdowns multiple times. So that felt like, even leading up to that the Bills scored a touchdown to finally take the lead, because there was a comeback involved in that game. They score a touchdown to take the lead, and then right away Tyreek Hill comes back and scores that touchdown, only for the Bills to come back and answer again. So that was just one of those that, you've seen enough football in your lifetime that you think, kicking off with 13 seconds left, we finally got this team. And then just kind of what happened.
I mean, Josh Allen threw 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and lost the playoff game. How is that humanly possible?
Yeah, you can't even believe it. And then you see, what happened with the Bengals, with the Rams playing in those games. You see where those teams are at this year, and you kind of, the Bengals beating the Chiefs. The Bengals had that feel of a team of destiny last year by the time they got through the playoff run. But you really look back at it, and the Raiders could have beat the Bengals in the first round of the playoffs pretty easily. And so it's wild to think that where things ended up, what could have happened, and certainly, especially after the first game this year, what the Bills did to the Rams. You feel like that might have been the Super Bowl that we really just let get away.
So I mean, through 5 games, the Bills are 4-1. Only loss was in Miami, where literally the Bills cramped. But there's a lot to like about the Bills. Obviously, Josh Allen's been stupendous to me. But what have you liked about the Bills besides Josh Allen early in this season?
I'd say that pass rush, I think, is something that has stood out. That was a concern last year that I think they've done a fantastic job. Von Miller coming in, addressed that. And then Gregory Rousseau, the rookie last year, has really developed and brought up his game. That would be, that was a problem last year, that they struggled. They were able to get pressure, but they weren't able to get sacks. And that was one of those that, in that game against Mahomes, they weren't able to sack him. They weren't able to get him on the ground in the backfield, and the secondary really wore down. I think the concern when you look at the team this year is that secondary, because they're very, very banged up, and we haven't seen Tre'Davious White back yet. He went out on Thanksgiving last year. We lost Micah Hyde. You lost Jordan Poyer. You're losing these guys out of the lineup that are these perennial Pro Bowl pieces that have come to be the backbone of your defense. And so it's interesting to see the strength of the defense shift a little bit, but you're concerned because how the defense is built, that, are there still the guys back there that can even hold up in one of these types of games?
And I think in this game, the safety is going to be important based on who's catching pass. Because if you saw Monday night, Travis Kelce caught 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, the safety, Matt Bolano, the linebacker, and then Tremaine Edmonds missed last week, and they're going to need him. They're going to need those guys on Kelce too. And so getting solid play out of all those positions, I think, is going to be the real key, because we haven't really seen a wide receiver step up for the Chiefs. And so, you're hoping you can put the clamps down on Kelce somehow and force some of their wide receivers to beat you. Now, Patrick Mahomes certainly helps with those types of things, but they have not had that guy step up yet.
Here's one area that I am concerned with the Bills. Guess who's Buffalo's leading rusher through 5 games?
Josh Allen.
That's not good if your quarterback's the leading rusher on the team.
Yeah, I was really hoping. I like the Jets' Breece Hall. I was hoping that they would get him in the draft, because it's been a long time since there was a string there where they kept using early draft picks on running backs, and the only thing they had in the offense was a good running back. But now with Josh Allen, Devin Singletary's okay, but you really feel like you'd feel better if he was your backup.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Singletary's only getting 4.3 yards a carry, but it's weird. Josh Allen's leading the team in rushing, but I feel like the Bills never can get a running game going with their backs, and Josh Allen's having to do way too much on the ground. And I am a little worried that the Bills aren't necessarily wasting Josh Allen, but they're more abusing him, like what Sean McDermott and Ron Rivera did in Carolina with Cam Newton, because Cam was great for a few years and then fell off a cliff.
Yeah, I think it's, I think there is more passing elements to Josh Allen's game. He's a better natural passer than Cam Newton. So I think they do a good job of reserving the rushing for kind of in case of emergency, whereas I think Cam Newton, they used him more almost like a fullback at times. It seemed like it. And so, the guys that are in charge of the Bills saw that firsthand, and they're very aware of what happened to Cam Newton. So I think they're doing their very best to mitigate some of that, but not getting a consistent rush game out of the running backs. Although, I mean, when you've got Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, and Josh Allen is able to throw the ball vertically on teams and score at will, it seems like that becomes less of an issue sometimes.
True. I mean, if Josh Allen throws 98-yard touchdown passes Gabriel Davis, you're all happy because we all remember what happened last January when Gabe Davis is still catching touchdowns.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, 4 touchdowns in that game, and it was nice to see him splash back because he missed week 2, then he was pretty quiet weeks 3 and 4. So it was nice to see him have that big game against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, notice he was no off the injury report with that bum ankle, which led me to think that Gabe Davis was more like Gabe Davis.
Very, very true. That's a good one.
So thinking of this game, I mean, obviously no Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs, but Buffalo changed. How do you want the Bills to attack Kansas City's defense? Because Steve Spagnuolo will try and pressure, but will he play more zone or will he pressure Allen? How do you want the Bills to attack Kansas City's defense in this game?
Use use Stephon Diggs, use Gabe Davis, use those advantages at wide receiver, get the ball out, allow Stephon Diggs to do what he does, work in space, and I think that's going to have to be the way that because this defense is so banged up, the Bills defense in the secondary, that if Patrick Mahomes is playing his A game, that I feel like you're going to have to match points. And we saw on Monday night it seemed like he was feeling pretty good about himself in the second half of that game, and so you're going to have to match points. So that would be the way. If they're going to play too high that cover shell, you're going to have to run the ball a little bit more, and that'll be interesting to see because the Chiefs are in many ways a mirror image of the Bills on offense when it comes to not really having that dominant rushing attack and kind of using multiple backs back there. So it's that's probably the way that you want to see. I think both teams probably almost want to play each other the same way, and by this point, I think both teams are getting pretty comfortable with how to play each other.
Yeah, especially when you play each other once in the regular season and once in January, because you've met in the regular season, the last 3 years, and now good chance you meet potentially this coming January for a third straight year.
Yeah, it's almost become a divisional opponent at this case, like the way that you're playing multiple games against them a year. And really, I think both teams kind of took picks in the draft to address playing against each other. They both went cornerback, and I think the Chiefs kind of shocked the Bills with their pick, taking McDuffie from Washington, moving up and getting him. I think the Bills kind of thought that was going to be a bird in hand, and then they moved up and got Kaiir Elam right after that. There was some video in the Bills war room when that Chiefs made that pick and who they announced, and you could tell that the Bills really liked that player.
Hey, I like that player. I like that player. Oh, we're gonna move up and take him and make sure you don't get him.
Yeah. I think there's gonna be a lot. I think these teams have very similar mindsets on how they're gonna build their football teams. And so I think we're gonna get this just feels like this is gonna be a back and forth that, you talked earlier about the Peyton Manning Tom Brady matchup. It really feels like despite how much talent there is at the quarterback position in the AFC, it feels like these two guys are kind of destined to be those leaders.
Okay, so defensively, obviously, we know what Pat Mahomes is capable of doing, but do you? And it seems like Kansas City's offense line is much better than it was in recent years. I remember that year that you played the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Well, literally everybody on the Chiefs line got hurt, but I would think the key is hope you can get pressure with force, so you don't have to bring the blitz and stop 87 from making plays.
I think that's exactly it. That's exactly the game plan. Are Greg Rousseau and Von Miller able to get home on Patrick Mahomes? Are you able to at least somewhat slow down Travis Kelce? And does any of these outside receivers step up and kind of be the guy in this game?
Yeah, because trying to think. I mean, Juju, NVS, Altman, Sky Moore. I mean, they might be good players, but could this be the one game where Kansas City really misses Tyreek Hill? Because you can remember the last couple of playoff games in January, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce have both tormented your defense.
Yeah, I remember the game 2 years ago. It really seemed like they just had no answer for Kelce, and they hit him over and over and over again. And then last year, it was really a Tyreek Hill game. That Tyreek Hill, several long big plays, long touchdowns. That even getting in position in the fourth quarter, the final drive there in the last 13 seconds. Now the game winner obviously went to Kelce, so that both guys did their job. But it is interesting to see this Chiefs team with just one of those guys now instead of two of those guys, because it's very hard to match up when you've got two of those guys and you're trying to focus attention on both of those guys. But now with just Kelce, it'll be interesting. Obviously, the Raiders didn't have any answers for it, but the Colts did a couple weeks back. So I think that this team has shown a little bit of weakness here and not having that extra second guy.
By the way, in that 2020 AFC Championship game, Cheetah caught 9 for 172, Kelce 13 for 118 and 2 scores.
Yeah. Obviously both guys were there, both guys making plays. I just remember it felt like Kelce was the one that every time the Bills would get him into 3rd and 7 or something like that, Kelce would just convert and over again and just kind of really, grind it out in that way. Obviously 13 receptions in the game.
So obviously, it seems like coaching matters today, and in today's NFL, offensive-minded coaches seem to have an advantage. But Buffalo Sean McDermott seems to do pretty well. Do you? But there's one problem I've seen with this team. The Bills don't do well in close games. Yeah, you made that great comeback in Baltimore, but look at week 3 against Miami. You couldn't win that game. There were a couple fluky plays. Is Sean McDermott the right coach for Josh Allen, or could Buff, because seemingly for these great quarterbacks, I think offensive mind coaches all better. Is Sean McDermott the right coach for Josh Allen?
I mean, Tony Dungy and Bill Belichick were defensive-minded coaches for Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. So, I think we've seen success from great quarterbacks having defensive-minded head coaches. Now, on that one, I can't dispute that the close game, and it's been frustrating because it does kind of seem like there are times that, even back to that playoff game against the Chiefs, the Bills were firing on all cylinders coming off that Patriots game where they just completely blew out the Patriots. And Sean McDermott, for whatever reason, the first half of that game plan decided that he just wanted to try to run the ball. And that really put them in a bad position instead of, because he wanted to minimize Patrick Mahomes' impact on the defense. Well, it turned out that the defense couldn't stop him anyways. And so that is the one thing that you come out of that game with questions. Had they just, fired the offense up from the jump, like, are the Bills, is it that type of thing where the Bills just outscore the Chiefs like through the course of the game just because having a little bit more success here and there, that and you kind of have that question in your mind. And so until somebody wins the Super Bowl, especially when you got an elite team, a favored team to go to the Super Bowl, I think you're always going to have those questions about the coach until they come through and win that game.
I mean, everyone in Philadelphia and Kansas City questioned whether or not Andy Reid could win the big one, and he finally won the big one. And it's like, he finally got his ring.
Yeah, that's the thing that we've seen before, where we talked about Tony Dungy with Peyton Manning, but then Tony Dungy with Tampa was he had him right there several years, and then they finally just had to pull the plug and go get John Gruden, and John Gruden was able to break free. So that is something that I think that we've seen, and it seems like for a lot of these coaches, like Bill Belichick just broke right through with Tom Brady and got that Super Bowl right away. It does kind of seem like either the coach breaks through right away, or you get to that point where things just start to mount and build, and you just kind of need a different voice in there.
True, especially when, where you get like, where it's like you barely lose, and it's like, do you need this? Do you need players, or is it more a coaching thing? So,
yeah, that's a great point.
Here's an interesting thing. I'm not saying the Bills should do this, but obviously you know what the Panthers did firing Matt Rule. And I heard rumors that the Bills were potentially interested in Christian McCaffrey. I don't know whether or not the Bills could afford him salary cap wise, but would McCaffrey be the perfect kind of scat back for Josh Allen?
Of course, I think McCaffrey is so talented, and they've used the running backs with Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator. Obviously, Dorsey has some familiarity with Christian McCaffrey. He was in Carolina when McCaffrey was drafted. There were rumors prior to the draft that the Bills had reached out to the Panthers to see what it would take to get Christian McCaffrey, and I saw the same rumors the other day. Monday, I think, was when they really were kind of fired up, and they were quickly debunked from the Bills side. But I think that they want that impact back that is able to contribute in the passing game and be the rushing back. And, Saquon Barkley was a guy that, I thought would be interesting for them to go get, because obviously Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll being the new brain trust in the Giants, you weren't sure, are they going to rebuild or what are they going to do? That team's sitting at 4-1 right now. So they're not going to trade Saquon Barkley for sure.
No, they're
But
not.
yeah, no, I think that like I said, I wanted Breece Hall in the draft, and I would be all in if they figured out a deal to get Christian McCaffrey. I think that would be a great piece.
By the way, I don't know if you saw the Dolphins Jets game, but that Brees Hall guy is still running.
Yeah, he's very, very good.
He might. He looks like a young Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I had a stat that when I wrote my article this week for Football Guys, I pulled up a stat that was Breece Hall has 213 receiving yards through his first 5 games, and the last 4 running backs to do that, 2 of the 4 were Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. So he's kind of right in that zone there with guys that have contributed to the passing game and the rushing game immediately.
Yeah, if only the Jets could have an offensive line, maybe they challenge your team in the AFC East, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical on the Jets long term, like right now, and being able to. I don't know that Zach Wilson's the guy, and I don't know that they have the firepower to keep up with the Bills. But that Dolphins win was great for them, and they're sitting at 3-2. You can't ignore that.
So here's an interesting stat. Guess what? You might not notice, but this week will be the first time this has ever happened in Patrick Mahomes' career. That Patrick Mahomes will be a home underdog because the Bills are a 2.5-point favorite.
That's crazy. Wow.
When I saw Buffalo, when a whole bunch of money came on the Bills week 1, I'm like, Buffalo's going to destroy the Rams, and Buffalo destroyed Matthew Stafford and the company. I mean, do you think the Bills should be favored in this game, or is Vegas seeing maybe that Buffalo's considerably better in Kansas City, because usually home field advantage for 3 points. So the fact Buffalo's the favorite would tell me to think maybe Vegas thinks the Bills are better than the Chiefs.
I mean, the Bills were the preseason Super Bowl favorites. I think that if the Bills play their best game, they're better than the Chiefs. Yeah, and that's kind of, are you going to get that best game? Is Patrick Mahomes going to overcome the things? I think that when you line them up roster to roster, if the Bills play their best game, I think they're the better team. But either team can win, especially when you got those guys at quarterback.
Yeah, get another. Yeah, so if you were a betting man, I think the over is like 54 points. Are you matching the over?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we're late enough in the season, usually early in the season, the defense is ahead. I think that we're late enough in the season that both teams, 54. So you're asking the 2 teams 28 touchdowns or 28 points, 4 touchdowns each. That gets you over that number. So wouldn't be shocked at that at all.
30-27.
Yeah, that hits that number. So.
I mean, the Chiefs won 30-29. Josh Allen only threw 4 touchdowns against the Steelers last week.
He did, yeah. 38 points last week against the Steelers. We know this offense can score, no problem.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be in for another crazy game. I mean, it's what you expect with two superstar quarterbacks. You've got probably the two best quarterbacks, the two quarterbacks everybody wants to see in football, and it's going to be another classic. Whether it lives up to the AFC division round last year, maybe will be a story. But I can't wait to see this game, and I'm sure everybody and whether they're eating barbecue wings or whether they're eating buffalo wings or barbecue pork will be tuning into this game.
Yeah, we're ready. I think all of America is tuning into this one. So
And it's not for Jim Nance and Tony Romo, right?
that's right.
Okay, so thanks for tuning and thanks for hopping on, Jeffrey. Wish you Bills well, and hopefully you'll be eating wings. You'll be eating buffalo wings this Sunday and be celebrating dessert in the desert this coming February.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you reaching out, and anytime I can jump on with you, it's always a thrill. So thank you so much for having me on.